Putin is growing increasingly isolated, and he's putting his country in a situation, his people in a situation that pretty soon will not be a lot dissimilar to North Korea. The tragedy here is, unlike anything that we have seen in a very, very long time. Hello, everyone. I am Trish Regan. Welcome to the Trish Regan Show. It has been a really challenging, difficult last couple of days. I thank everyone who has been supporting me and following me on locals, trishregan.locals.com. I thank you for following me on Twitter at Trish_Regan. I know I have been working very hard over the last couple of days to make sure that we bring information to you quickly, accurately, and making sure that you have enough info to help digest all that's happening right now. I want to point out that parts of today's program are brought to you by Legacy Precious Metals. There's never been a better time to invest in gold. Clearly right now, if you invested in gold, you're pretty happy about it because there's a real move to safe haven assets. Go to legacypminvestments.com. Again, legacypminvestments.com. I also just want to give a quick shout out to our other sponsor here, AMAC. It's a critical time. It's a critical year for this country. We do have elections coming up in 2022. There's a lot happening, especially when you look at what's going on in the world right now with Vladimir Putin, Ukraine, and what we have learned is we need to be a whole lot smarter about our own domestic policy, protecting key industries like tech, like energy, which have really gotten the shaft. I mean, energy specifically, when you think about how Keystone was shut down. Well, AMAC is an organization that is working to advance your values, my values, values of conservative Americans. And so they want to see us have better energy independence because this is so critical, right, from a national security point of view. So do me this favor. It's a win-win because it's only $16 and you're going to save more than that on any of their dinner coupons. You get great deals on dinner, travel, hotels, all that good stuff, restaurants. So go and sign up for amac.us/Regan. This is a way to help support your values there in Washington, D.C. and throughout the country. It's a conservative, action-oriented, 50-plus organization. They've got well over 2 million members. And again, they're working to make sure they advance your values, which is really, really important right now. But this is pretty wild. We got a market that, let's see where we end off, but just getting hammered today. I expected that it would. In fact, Friday's turnaround in the markets really shocked me, although I remember reopening after 9/11 and there was kind of this patriotic push. I think the reality, though, here is we are in a very different world. This is very uncharted territory. We are going to be looking at a market that experiences continued downside. I would start looking for value opportunities there. I think you've got a little bit of time because I don't think that this is going to turn around overnight unless we're really able to see some demonstrable change in terms of the inner circle of Putin's. All of these sanctions, by the way, do have their effect, and I'm a big believer in using financial sanctions to the best of our ability. I mean, we certainly don't want to be sending American lives, right? But if we lose a few dollars along the way, if BP has to lose its 20% stake in Rostov, I'm okay with that. And I'm okay if I'm a shareholder in BP or some of these other multi-global multi-state corporations, global corporations. I'm okay losing a little bit of that value because I think this is just the necessary pain that we're all going to take right now. The problem, of course, is it is going to have an effect on the middle class, and I'm going to get to that momentarily. But just in terms of the markets, you will probably see more and more volatility, more and more downside in the coming days as all of this really sinks in. At some point, though, it's probably going to be a buy because I am long-term a believer in America, a long-term believer in freedom. And freedom will prevail here. That's the message that everybody needs to remember. Freedom will prevail. So you want to still be in U.S. equities. And look, I think the world knows that. You look at the flight to safety that's happening right now. I mean, we just talked about gold. That's one of the flights to safety. But the other flight to safety, of course, is the U.S. dollar. So as you watch the ruble plunge, the U.S. dollar gains strength, right? Because people want to be in the U.S. dollar. It's seen as that safe haven in a time like this. U.S. Treasuries another safe haven in a time like this. And I think in time, U.S. equities will again be that safe haven play. But there's going to be some adjustment that comes, so just be aware of that over the next couple of days. But all in, I mean, we need to be thinking strategically here. We've got to be thinking about the long game. What I can tell you is that Americans are not as dumb as some people think. And we have incredible, incredible intelligence professionals around the world. And they have been working overtime, and they've been working overtime for quite some time. I would actually point out that going all the way back to 2007, and I may have mentioned this to you before, because I remember back in 2007, it was June 2007, I was at the G8 summit in Heiligendamm, Germany. And that was one of the first times Putin really came out and made it very clear what his ultimate aspirations were. And there were people that understood this, including Yulia Tymoshenko, who had been the leader during the Orange Revolution there in Ukraine, eventually went on to become prime minister. She really understood this. She articulated it well. I encourage everybody to go look at this. The Foreign Affairs Journal, which is run by Council on Foreign Relations, they put out a piece from Yulia back in 2007, in May of 2007. And I remember reading it and really being blown away, and then talking to numerous people who were very familiar with Putin's thinking. He always aspired to this, right? He always wanted to basically conquer the world. He wanted to reassemble the Soviet Union, and felt that that was the most important thing that he could do in his life. And he's got a kind of backwards approach. Well, you or I, and even China, by the way, because they're way more logical, well, we might say, well, the key to do that is through economic success. We want to build our economy, build our businesses so that they're so strong that we become the dominant force, right? You can't mess with us, so to speak. He never really took that tact. He kind of benefited, let's be honest, from America's focus on green energy and all these social issues, right? All this ESG stuff, which makes it difficult for portfolio managers to invest in traditional energy stocks. He benefited from that. He benefited from some of the distractions that we've had going on. And he benefited from Germany not investing in its own energy infrastructure, but instead importing all this energy from Russia. In fact, do you know, Europe as a whole gets about $100 billion worth of natural gas. It's 40% of their supply from Russia every year. So you can imagine what this is going to mean for energy prices, nat gas prices. It is a giant wake-up call for all of us to say, okay, you know what? We need to focus on ourselves. We need to focus on our own domestic production of things like oil. The semiconductor industry shouldn't be sitting over there in Taiwan. It should be right here at home. And I'm very encouraged because Intel is building a $100 billion plant, a big super center there for semiconductors in Ohio. And they're expected to break ground on that this year. But we need more of this. I mean, it can't just, can't just flip a switch. We need some long-term planning on this front. We need to encourage businesses, American businesses, to be setting up shop here as much as possible. And of course, keep our allies close. What we have seen over the last, 72 hours is that Europe is stepping up to the plate in a pretty big way. We have had some tremendous intelligence. The British have had some tremendous intelligence. We have shared that with the Europeans. A few months ago, I think they might have thought we were all a little bit crazy, but this is all coming now to fruition. And I would add, I'm not happy with the Biden administration's handling of this thus far until now. I think this could have been avoided, and I have my reasons for that. I think that for whatever reason, under the previous administration, Putin felt less threatened. He didn't feel like there was a chance that NATO could be breathing down his back. And then things changed, and he was worried. And perhaps that's what somewhat led to this escalation. I don't know. Well, it's difficult to make this analysis right now. I think we'll have to look at the autopsy when it's all said and done and try and determine what really led to this. But I can tell you that he's the president right now, and we're in this messed up situation. So it's going to be a real test to see how we come through this. I am hearing that, again, we've provided a lot of intelligence, but the Europeans are really important. That's good. Germany, way upping its spending. Remember when Trump used to complain they're not even doing their 2%? Well, they've doubled their spending, and they're now spending more than the 2% requirement. You've got countries that aren't even part of NATO now that are helping. I mean, Norway, for example, this is a very big deal. They've always refused to send weapons. Now they are sending weapons. You've got Poland that is sending machinery. You've got Switzerland saying, you know what, we're going to come on board with these sanctions. So this is a really, really important development. The world is united, except, of course, for China. China, which is trying to be sort of, maybe they're trying to emulate Switzerland here. They're trying to kind of, figure out where they stand. I think they're scared. I think they're scared of Putin. Certainly his rhetoric, when you start talking about things like nuclear war, that is really, really scary stuff. And so I think China is trying to figure out how they should position themselves. But all the more reason why it's so critical that the U.S. and the European allies double down on this, because we can't give an inch to a bully that wants to come in and take over a sovereign nation. It's a sovereign nation. You don't go and blow up buildings and carpet bomb and kill children. I mean, this is not okay. And if we allow this to happen, like Barack Obama allowed Crimea, then what does that say about us as a civilization? Some people said, oh, it's going to kill the US dollar, because if we're the world's reserve currency, you can't suddenly just wipe out 640 billion trillion, forgive me, dollars billion. I'm getting my numbers all mixed up here. I've had a lot of incoming, I guess, over the last couple of days. You can't just wipe out $640 billion that has been stockpiled by Vladimir Putin in U.S. dollars, reserve currency. But if you don't, then what are you standing for, right, as a nation? Are you standing for mass murder? I'm sorry, but, we drew a line in the sand with Syria, and he crossed it. We let him take Crimea. I mean, at what point does this stop? It's not going to stop. He will go for Lithuania. He will go for all of those Baltic states that are part of NATO, right? And by the way, again, speaking to the sort of cohesion of Europe right now, you've got so many other countries now that maybe weren't looking to be part of NATO, like Sweden and Finland, saying, wait, we're signing up, even though Putin's continuing to threaten. So it shows you that the community there in Europe, with our support, even if it's just behind the scenes, is not willing to let this madman take them all down, which means, if you think about it, they really will become the North Korea of that region, really of the world. There's one slight difference, however. It's going to be hard for Putin to maintain that kind of iron dome around him, or the iron curtain, I should say. Iron dome they need right now. Israel maybe should bring that over to Ukraine. But it's something that is going to be increasingly hard for Vladimir Putin, in light of the fact that so many Russians live in so many different places, and they still have family back there. There's still communication back in. All the Russians that live abroad, all the oligarchs who right now are going to be pretty angry, and you've seen a number of them now being led by the gentleman at Alpha Group, who was Ukrainian-born, who came out over the weekend and said, the answer is never war. He's absolutely right. And the answer is never war. But if you're an oligarch who now stands to lose your billions of dollars and your yachts and your private jets and you name it, it hits close to home. We need more of that. We need to step up all of our sanctions. We need to be coordinated in this entire effort. We need to be willing to manage the financial pain, which means we need Joe Biden and team to think strategically about our own businesses, our own success of our energy industry. Because you know what? We can get away from this problem. We can. I mean, we saw that the Middle East came out, and Saudi Arabia is saying, well, they're not going to change anything with Russia because, they still are oil producers together. You know what? We can produce the oil. We've got it, okay? We can produce it, and we got it up in Canada, and you get that Keystone Pipeline in here, and we've got a whole lot more oil. We got a whole lot more natural gas. And I'm not saying you need to cut off green energy. I'm all for green energy too. I said the other day, we can go out and paint every single roof white. Do whatever you got to do. Put solar panels on and encourage everybody to get electric vehicles. I have no problem with any of that, but don't cut off the very industry that could help protect us and our economy from this entire mess. All right, you can do both of them together, and the focus right now should be on making sure that America is energy independent and doesn't need any of these thugs, any of these bozos trying to tell us what to do. So that's something that the administration is going to have to confront. But the good news here, I'm going to leave you with this, is that Vladimir Putin's power is diminishing by the minute, by the hour, by the day. And I'm very hopeful that we will emerge from this stronger together, a safer world together. The interim is going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's going to be bloody. It's going to be awful. And we'll look back and say, why did it have to come to this? I am not going to lay too much today on President Biden. I believe this is a time that our country should be united and focused on the end game, which is helping the Europeans, helping the Ukrainians to secure their country. That is the most important thing right now. But I am a fundamental believer in this: freedom. And freedom will win. Thank you so much for listening today. Do follow me. Support the show at trishregan.locals.com. Follow me on Twitter and on Facebook. And we're going to talk some more. Lots of developments coming in tomorrow.